Hi, grade 5. Today we're going to finish reading this week's biography, The Boy Who Invented TV. Okay, after yet another breakdown, Philo set out to fix the machine himself. He took it apart, cleaned it, put it back together, and pressed the on button. It worked. Philo's father was enormously proud of him. From then on, he was the Farnsworth electrical engineer. So remember, guys, when the generator broke down, the repairman came and Philo asked him many questions. So it's clear that he paid attention because now that it broke down again, he was able to fix it himself. Philo tinkered with broken motors, reels of wire, old tools. He devised gadgets to hook up to the generator, anything to make his chores easier, like installing lights in the barn. His least favorite thing was washing clothes. Hours of standing while pushing and pulling the lever that swished the water around the wash tub. So he attached a motor with pulleys to the lever to make it turn on its own, leaving him extra time to read. When he was 13, Philo entered a contest sponsored by Science and Invention magazine. Using what he'd learned about magnets, he pictured an ignition lock that would make the new Model T Fords harder to steal. When he won the contest, Philo spent the prize money on his first pair of proper long pants. Wearing boyish short pants at the Friday dances was just plain embarrassing. Philo went on investigating television. An article called Pictures That Fly Through the Air stimulated him. Scientists were having no luck. So far, their ideas resulted in crude mechanical devices that used whirling discs and mirrors. Philo doubted any disc could whirl fast enough to work. Much better to do the job electronically. To harness electrons, those mysterious, invisible particles that traveled at the speed of light. Okay, so we know that Philo is very interested in machines. All right, and here we are reading, he is 11 years old now, all right, and he has moved to a farm that has electricity, and he has also heard the word television for the first time. Okay, we know here that Philo won a contest, and he used his prize money to buy clothes. So this shows us that even though Philo was different from many other kids, he was still a regular teenage boy who wanted to fit in with the other kids his age and dress the same way that they did. All right. One bright sunny day, 14-year-old Philo plowed the potato fields. It was the best chore for thinking, out in the open country by himself. Back and forth, the plow created rows of overturned earth. He looked behind him at the lines he was carving, perfectly parallel. Then he almost fell off the plow seat. All his thoughts fused together. Instead of seeing rows of dirt, he saw a way to create television, breaking down images into parallel lines of light, capturing them and transmitting them as electrons, then reassembling them for a viewer. If it was done quickly enough, people's eyes could be tricked into seeing a complete picture instead of lines. Capturing light in a bottle was how he thought of it, using electricity, not a machine with moving parts inside. Philo's grin was wide. He told the idea to his father, who tried to understand but couldn't keep up with his son. All right, so look at the illustration here that we have of the potato field. We notice that these are parallel lines, and Philo here is imagining that he can break images down into parallel lines of light, just like the lines on the field. And this is going to, this is what gives him the idea of using parallel lines of light in television. In the autumn, Philo started high school, riding horseback 4 miles each way. Mr. Tolman, the senior chemistry teacher, noticed that this freshman devoured books the way other students ate popcorn. He started tutoring Philo, coming in early and leaving late, so the teacher has noticed that this boy is brilliant. One day, Mr. Tolman passed by a study hall and heard loud talking. Philo's latest hero was Albert Einstein, with his controversial new theory of relativity. Now Philo stood at the front of the room, enthusiastically explaining it to his classmates step by step. Usually Philo spoke little, with a halting voice, But when he could share his knowledge of science, he was a different boy. So science gave him confidence, right? Because um, he is an expert in this field and he knows what he is talking about because he has read so much and studied so much and he's so interested in science. All right, he spoke with more enthusiasm. He spoke louder. Philo had been aching to discuss the idea he'd gotten in the potato field with someone who might understand. One day, he finally told Mr. Tolman. All over the blackboard, he drew diagrams of his television. His teacher was boggled. Philo ripped a page out of the notebook he always kept in his shirt pocket. He scribbled a diagram of an all-electric camera, the kind of converter he envisioned. An image dissector, he called it. Mr. Tolman pointed out that it would take a lot of money to build such a thing. The only way he could think of helping was to encourage Philo to go on to college. But Philo was forced to quit college at 18, after his father died. By then the family had moved back to Utah, to the town of Provo, and Philo supported them by working all sorts of jobs in nearby Salt Lake City. So here his dream was put on hold because he had to stop studying, all right, because his father died. And of course, Mr. Tolman knows that college is going to be the one thing that will give Philo the opportunity that he needs to develop his idea. Okay. His favorite one was repairing radios. Though commercial radio broadcasts had started 4 years earlier, Philo couldn't believe in 1924 how many people still hadn't heard one. On weekends, he organized radio parties so his friends could gather around one of the bulky wooden cabinets and listen to the new stations. Pem Gardner, the girl next door, was interested in radio and also in Philo. Wasn't it funny, Philo remarked to Pem, how they liked to watch the radio even though there was nothing to see? Radio was such a fine way to bring folks together, and television, he sensed, would be even better. Thanks to his obsession with television, Philo had already lost one girlfriend, who called him too much of a dreamer, but Pem cheered him on. Now what he needed was money. He grew a mustache to look older, brought a new blue suit, and started to call himself Phil. He met 2 California businessmen, and over dinner one night, he took them through a step-by-step explanation of his image dissector, a camera tube that would dissect an image into a stream of electrons, converting them into pulses of electrical current. A receiver would capture the current, then convert it back into points of light, the original image. As he talked, he got more and more passionate. After scanning images line by line, just like rows in a potato field, this machine would beam them into homes. That was the best thing about television, he said. It would let families and whole communities share the same stories. By making people less ignorant of one another, he went on, it would teach and inspire, maybe even lead to world peace. The 2 businessmen exchanged looks, then agreed to put up $6,000 so Philo could build the first model. They gave him a year to make it work. Philo hit upon a way to work 24 hours a day. He set himself problems to solve while sleeping. He filed for several government patents that would protect his ideas for the next 17 years. It was important for him to keep control, to get credit. On their wedding night, he turned to Pim. I have to tell you, there is another woman in my life, and her name is television. Pim helped out. Their first lab was their dining room table in Hollywood. Pim learned to use a precision welder to make tube elements. Everything had to be built from scratch. When they needed a break, they went to one of the new talking movies. Finally, they got the lights, wires, and tubes to work in unison, so all at the same time. But at the first demonstration, Philo forgot one item. He failed to take the power surge into account. The entire image dissector exploded. Pem, who took notes about everything, labeled this experiment Bang, Pop, Sizzle. All right, so Philo was able to finally build his image dissector with money from 2 businessmen who thought that his idea was great, and they trusted him and gave him the money and gave him 1 year to make it work. All right, and he and Pim were able to make all of the parts for this. He says to his wife on their wedding night, he says, "I have to tell you, there is another woman in my life. Her name is television." This means that um, he is so committed to inventing the television, just as he is committed to Pym. All right, so this tells us that also inventing television isn't just work to him, it's his passion, and he loves it. Still, Philo was able to find new investors who gave him another year. All right, so there was, um, so it didn't work out, right? He forgot about the power surge and it exploded, so he had to find new investors. So he found new investors who gave him another year. At his new lab in San Francisco, Philo met the deadline, so he finally created it within that year. In 1927, a small group of people watched as the first image in history flickered on a TV. He said, "That's it, folks, we've done it. There you have electronic television." That first image was not fancy. It was a straight line, blurry and bluish. Later, he was able to show a dollar sign, and then the motion of cigarette smoke. The first person to be televised was his true love, Pym, who didn't know she was on camera and had her eyes closed. The following year, in front of a crowd of reporters, 22-year-old Philo Farnsworth announced the invention of television. So in that year, he tried and he finally was able to introduce his invention to the world. That night, he was behind the wheel of a borrowed car. He and Pym were heading home after catching a movie with another couple. They stopped to buy the San Francisco Chronicle from a newsboy, and there was a photo of Philo holding his invention. The article praised a young genius for creating a revolutionary light machine. Pym and his friends read it aloud, bouncing up and down, yelling. Philo was silent, but a big smile crossed his face. He was a real inventor, like his heroes, someone who connected people, a shaper of the world to come. Thanks to him, the future would include TV. All right, so as we are reading, I kept asking myself why Philo cared so much about inventing television. We know now that he wanted to invent television because he thought it would bring people together, teach, inspire, and it would maybe even lead to a world peace. All right, so this is what was most important to him. Okay, so let's just look back at all of the events that led to him inventing the television. So as a child, at first, he became interested in machines. When he was, how old was he? He was 11. When he was 11 years old, he moved to a farm. This farm had electricity, and he heard the word television for the first time. Then he invented machines that made his chores easier, all right, while he continued to read about television and he continued to do more research. Then one time when he was plowing the fields, all right, he saw potato fields and he was struck with an idea about how to make television while he looked at the parallel lines. So he went and got a loan from two businessmen to build the first model. It failed. However, he got help from new investors that gave him more time and money, and he was able to make the first television. All right, this was in 1927 when it finally worked. All right, at the end it says he was a real inventor just like his heroes. Two of his heroes that we read about before were Alexander Graham Bell and Thomas Edison. All right, and um, the biographer makes a connection between these heroes and Philo because Philo was also an inventor, right? And his invention of television connected people. It shaped the world just as Alexander Graham Bell's telephone and Thomas Edison's phonograph did. All right, so let's go back to our essential question. The essential question is on page 68. How does technology lead to creative ideas? We now know that technology leads to creative ideas by inspiring people and by giving people opportunities to experiment and try new things. All right, so that's it for today. Um, on the weekly plan, it says that you have grammar homework for today. However, you do not have homework as we only had one session today. We were supposed to have two, but today we only have one. So we will complete the grammar lesson that was scheduled for today, tomorrow, and your homework will be tomorrow instead of today. All right, so be sure to check Smart Schools for your grammar homework tomorrow, and I will see all of you. I will see all of you tomorrow. Those of you who attend physically and those of you who are online, please be sure to check the next video because we will review the important elements in this story. And also we will start a new grammar lesson. Okay, bye guys.